All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have Juan Ciscomani, who's the Republican candidate for Congressional District 6. He's going to be running against Kirsten Engel in the November election. And his district is kind of like to the east of Tucson, all the way down to the border, and then up to Graham County. So what I would like to do here today is we are going to start in a minute. I'm going to ask Mr. Ciscomani to do a brief introduction. I'm going to ask him some questions about major topics. And in the meantime, if you have questions you want me to ask, put them in the chat. And then as we go along, I'll start filtering through them and asking them to Mr. Ciscomani. So if you could, Juan, if you could just please give us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, education, military experience, previous office, just all that stuff.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Kurt, for having me, and thank you to the Daily Star for putting this together, and everybody that's joined and the questions that are coming in. We enjoy this kind of dialogue. I think it's necessary and important for our voters to have access to us in every way possible, and this is definitely one of them. I grew up here in Tucson, and I think the culture here in Tucson is exactly that, to be able to have access to your elected officials or those that are bidding for that position. So I'm happy to do this. And I grew up here in Tucson. My family came from Mexico, from Hermosillo in Sonora. That's where my family is from. That's where I was born as well, and came here as a young boy. I went to Utterback Middle School. I went to Rincon High School after that, where I graduated from in 2000, and then went to Pima Community College, and then the U of A. So definitely homegrown. This is where I've spent my childhood. This is where I grew up. My first job was at the Wendy's on Broadway in Kolb, which is right in the district right now. And this is where I also worked through college. I worked part of it in Wendy's, and then also maintenance at Pima College, which is how I helped pay for my school. So I worked all the way through college, and Valley, obviously, hard work. My dad is my best example of that hard work. He is currently a bus driver, and he has been for a long time, first for TUSD and then for Suntran, where he spent the majority of his career. And the best way to kind of like just encapsulate my story is the conversation I had with him, Kurt, when he told me right before I launched the campaign. He said, gosh, where else could we have our story? He said, we come to this country, we immerse in the culture, we learn English, we become US citizens. He said, I drive a bus my whole life, and my son has a shot at becoming a member of the United States Congress. Where else in the world could we have this kind of opportunity and this shot? And that's the American dream story. But my story is not unique. I think you have one. Everyone here in this group has a story of opportunity that got us to where we are. So that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the American dream. I'm fighting for the opportunities. I'm a dad of 6. Laura, my wife, is also a first-generation American. And we have 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. And we want to make sure that they have the opportunities that we had growing up that they also can enjoy. So that's what drove me into this race. My work experience also here in Tucson, I worked at the U of A for a bit, running a personal finance program, actually teaching students about credit cards and how student loans work and all those things. And then I went over to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, where my main job was advocating for small businesses, for lower taxes, for less regulation on businesses. And this is where I really dug my teeth into the business community here in Tucson. And then shortly after that, about 3.5 years later, Governor Ducey won the election in 2014, and I became part of his administration as first director of Southern Arizona, in charge of the 7 southern counties for the governor, which 5 of those counties are included in this district that I'm now running to represent. And then also my role expanded years in to also oversee all the operations of the state with Mexico, both diplomatically and also in trade and in commerce. So I was heading up the Arizona-Mexico Commission that is in charge of both of these areas with Mexico, both in the trade, tourism, commerce, and the diplomatic relationship with them, as they have 5 consulates here in the state of Arizona. I was the main resource for them and liaison to the governor. So this is where I've spent my career, understanding, listening, representing the border communities and definitely the counties where we are in now on all kinds of issues that I'm sure we'll cover a good number of them today. And so I've been very, very familiar for the past 80 years working for the administration, now transitioning into, well, that was state. I saw a lot of need of things that we needed to impact, that I want to impact on the federal side that wasn't able to be done on the state side of things. that effectively. So that combined with wanting the opportunities for my kids as they grow up in this country the same way that I did, jump into this race and go for it.
Okay. All right, well, that kind of leads right into one of my questions. You have this business background, and there's an enormous amount of trade that goes back and forth between Arizona and Sonora. So what would you like to, if you're a federal legislator, what do you want that to look like in Southern Arizona?
Well, let me tell you that for Arizona, Mexico is a #1 trading partner, ×4. Over $17 billion of trade, imports and exports, two-way trade happens between Arizona and Mexico. Canada is #2 for Arizona at $4 billion. So Mexico's 4 times the amount of trade that we do with our first place Mexico as we do with our second place Canada. So this is highly important. Kurt, this isn't even touching the tourism aspect of it. You know how it is here in Tucson or in Southern Arizona during the holiday season, where 1/3 of the license plates out there are from Sonora and from Sinaloa because shoppers come up and they spend their money here. This is a vital relationship for us. Over 200,000 jobs in Arizona depend on this trade. So we need to continue to promote that in different ways. Infrastructure is a key one. The federal government has obviously a key component in that. Now, we've seen from the most recent infrastructure projects that the federal government is not funding fully any one of these projects anymore, and it needs partnerships between the private sector, the state, and the feds. That's how we got SR 189 passed a few years ago and the funding for that. SR 189 is the road that connects the Mariposa Port of Entry into I-17 to flow with the semis, and that has increased the ability to welcome more traffic in that area. This was a project by a Tiger grant from the federal government and also from private sector investment and the state as well. This is what we're going to continue to see. There are more improvements that we need. We need a Sonoran corridor that now connects 17 with the 10 without having to come all the way inside the city, that we can just cut across. That's another project that we need partnership on. So the trade is that piece, but also the tone of conversation, I think, is very important. Letting our partners know and trade that we're open for business and that we want to do all that we can to, one, protect American jobs, of course, but this trade enhances the region. This trade helps everyone on both sides, and we need to continue to promote it in a way that prioritizes, obviously, American jobs, and we were able to do that through the USMCA deal passed a few years ago as well that made NAFTA even better.
Mm-hmm. And so to continue with this a little bit, is if you're going to do anything in terms of border infrastructure, that means you're going to have to deal with immigration and drug smuggling and the other, the security related aspects of the border. So what do you want to see with regards to border security in Southern Arizona?
No, I really like the way you framed it, because this is the way that I've been framing it, Kurt. When you look at the border, I always talk about the 3 different conversations we can have, and obviously more, but to simplify it in different buckets, you have one, which is trade and commerce that we just talked about. This is the flow of entries through our ports of entry, including tourism in this. This is one border conversation, the trade and the commerce part of it, the trade. And then you have immigration. Now, immigration is people coming here like my family did and myself, seeking a better life to stay here, going through the process of becoming a permanent resident and then a U.S. citizen. That I have to tell you, the process is long, the process is bureaucratic, is outdated, and we definitely need to impact that process. I can tell you from firsthand experience. Didn't read it in the book. I didn't read just what's going on. I went through the process literally and got sworn in as a U.S. citizen. This is a process that it needs to be fixed. Now, I wouldn't change it for anything in the sense of having paid the price for that. And I thank my parents for it. They initiated it. And by the time it got completed, we were able to be aware of what was going on. So that process needs to be impacted and fixed. That process also includes guest workers. It includes guest workers for the daily shift that some of these Yuma field workers go back and forth. It includes for high-tech jobs. This is all part of the immigration bucket of the conversation. And then we have the security bucket of the conversation, which is right now where the priority is, because without a secure border, really the other two take a toll, and they can function at the level that they can. This whole idea and this whole notion right now, and what's really happening with the border crisis that we have, is truly impacting what we see on the immigration side, because things are backlogged, the system is overwhelmed, trade and commerce takes a hit because obviously business like certainty. And when you have illegal activities overwhelmingly on the border, that impacts the other two. Not to mention the national security crisis with that, and also the humanitarian piece. Not sure if you saw this in the Lukeville area just a few days ago, that they found an 18-month-old roaming around the desert by himself, crying. And then a 4-month-old laying face down on the ground, and they were able to bring him back. But these are, I have 6 kids. I can't imagine that scenario, and it breaks my heart. So this is a humanitarian issue as much as it is any kind of other issue. And then one more thing that I'll say on that, the flow of fentanyl, which is the worst drug that we've ever seen, pouring into our streets. And it's not only happening through the desert, this is happening through our ports of entry as well, of the cartels just having the gall and the confidence to just pour these drugs into our communities. Fentanyl now, you probably saw, they have color-coded pills now that looks like candy for kids. This is dangerous. They're targeting our people. So people on our side of the border suffer, people on the other side being trafficked suffer as well. And the only winners here are being the cartels. So that's a security part of it that we really need to crack down on, add technology and give our agents the resources they need to do their job. So again, as I summarize, security is a part of it, the priority, trade and commerce, and immigration. And we need to tackle all 3 of those. And I have the drive and the experience, both personal and professional, to go at it.
And with the legal immigration part of it, you kind of put out, possibly a guest worker program could be a policy that you promote. Can you name us, for on the enforcement side, or let's do the illegal immigration side? What's the policy that you would promote?
Well, we have policies in place that we just need to follow the law on. These are policies that are currently in place that are just not being enforced. And, of course, we have the refugee program that is different than the asylum program, that is different than those entering the country, crossing the border without any documentation or checking in with anyone. What we are used to seeing on illegal immigration of people trying to, of course, avoid law enforcement, those days you're not seeing that anymore. You're seeing the opposite. And I've seen it with my own eyes of families checking in, and just a half hour later or so, when the agents are busy tackling or with that issue with that family, taking care of them, processing them, then you see the real dangerous things going on through the outskirts of that when the really bad guys are crossing over the bad drugs. And these families are being used as distractions and taking advantage of their vulnerability of seeking a better life. It's the messaging being sent by this administration to the rest of South America on saying it's open, come on over, we'll give you a ride wherever you want to go. And these are the things that is the messaging that is hurting this our border, because it's just pouring in based on the failed way that this administration has dealt with the issue. And saying that they've dealt with it is an overstatement, because they haven't. They've ignored it. Neither President Biden or Vice President Harris have been to the border to visit and see with their own eyes what's really going on. So what we need to do is just enforce the laws that we have in the books. And that is truly the humanitarian piece here, because that will avoid and close off a chapter of the business of these cartels that they have in the human trafficking side and all the abuse that goes with that.
And so, enforcing the laws that we have on the books, I've covered federal court, and I've seen there's a great deal the federal government can do to people crossing the border illegally. Are you, do you want to have, more prosecutions for them? Do you want to have more like surveillance towers? There's a whole gamut of things, like under the Trump administration, you had, for a short term, families being separated at the border, right? But you also had, under the Obama administration, there were a whole lot of prosecutions for people who just crossed the border, really, like, within a day or two. Could you just, in that sense, could you tell us like what you would do?
Well, resources have a lot to do with it here, and technology also has a lot to do with it. The agents that are on the boots on the ground will, frankly, probably always be outnumbered by all the traffic coming in. No question about it. But technology can alleviate a lot of that. Anything from motion sensors to all these other gamuts that you're talking about on the technology side that can help us. But right now, frankly, the problem is not being of identifying who, when they're coming in, is what do we do once we encounter them? We're just, the processing is so overwhelming right now that it's just being done quickly and then led into the country without the proper vetting. That is a problem. And when you look at criminals also that have committed crimes and they're here illegally, and then they serve their sentence and then they get released into our streets, they should be going back. The people that have committed and they've been convicted for crimes should not be in our country. And the speeding up of the process and processing people, that's something that we need to tackle as well. Give more resources to the courts to be able to get to who people are in a much quicker way and be able to determine who can stay and who's not able to stay.
Okay, let's move into fentanyl, which, I agree with you. Like, this is it's causing tens of thousands of overdose deaths in the country every year. And so you kind of briefly touched on that. Is there anything specific that you would do to stem the flow of fentanyl?
Well, you got to see where they're coming in right now. And like I said, a lot of these drugs are coming in also through our ports of entry. You got to see where they're coming from. And obviously they're getting the materials from China and they're producing them in Mexico and able to ship them up. The cartels are empowered. The cartels have unlimited resources. And this whole thing with the human trafficking is just giving them another resource, another avenue to gain profits and be able to invest it in these drugs that they're pouring into our country and making our youth, quite frankly, and the adults as well, but addicted to this. You saw this, the fentanyl surpassed as the #1 leading cause of death among young people in Pima County, surpassing car accidents. This is a real issue that we have right now. And the security on the border is a #1 issue that we have to enforce in order to alleviate and stop, to the biggest extent possible, the flow of these drugs. Our agents are doing all that they can at the border and the ports of entry, and they've apprehended thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of these pills that could have killed billions of people, according to the reports that they've sent out. So kudos to them. They're doing a great job, but they need more help, more resources, more officers that can do this. And unfortunately, this slows down the traffic at the border, impacts trade, and we can have that whole conversation again. This is something that really has a ripple effect on every front. But the main one is health and the addiction that our country is facing.
Okay. All right. And I have one of these questions that's come up in previous ones that I also did a bunch of reporting on. So we have the border wall. And so we have a huge part of the Arizona border has the 30-foot tall wall. And then we have gaps. And we have some that are being plugged up by the containers by the governor, and the federal government might build some after that. But we also have the wildlife side of it. And I've had this question come up about, should we have little openings for wildlife, or should we take down sections that are heavily trafficked corridors for wildlife? What do you think?
Well, I think the cartels are going to exploit any kind of vulnerability on that wall, any kind of gap. They're going to want to exploit it. There are areas in the desert and the terrain that, due to geographic reasons, the wall cannot be erected in some of these areas. That's well known, and I don't think anybody is arguing that. I've taken helicopter rides all through the border in every single county that borders Mexico here in Arizona, and each terrain looks different, Kurt. I mean, when you look at Yuma, it's a lot flatter in that area than when you look at Cochise County, and definitely Santa Cruz and parts of Pima, where the terrain you just can't do something like that you could in other areas. So you got to consider that. Obviously, you have to look at the wildlife. Sure. The priority, though, should be human life, and they should be stopping the crime and the illegal activities happening there. And if for whatever reason there needs to be some kind of opening somewhere, then more resources should be able to go in that area on foot traffic or cameras, or more security on that side as well. But again, I go back to, it's not only being able to capture them anymore, it's being able to enforce the laws that are in the books that we're just, frankly, the government is ignoring right now.
All right, I got one more question about the border, and then we'll move on to something else. Every year in southern Arizona, a tragedy unfolds, right? We find 100 to 200 or more the remains of migrants who died in the desert. And you mentioned the importance of human life with regard to the border. What would you do to reduce the number of migrants who die every year in southern Arizona?
This is, again, an issue that I think touches people, whatever side of the aisle you come in, regarding the policies that should be done. When a human life is lost like that, it's heartbreaking, especially when you've seen the stories of mothers being found with their babies still attached to them. These are stories that I can't imagine. Again, as a family man, this touches my heart. And that's why it angers me so much that the messaging to all of South America has been that just come on over. And then that gives the wrong idea to them of what's actually going to be expecting them in this journey. And the cartels are right there ready to exploit the desperation that these families have in their home countries and the wrong messaging from our White House to these people and saying, and offering them this perceived free and easy entry into the country, which is anything but that. So I think when people realize that they cannot and should not be able to cross the way they're doing it now and endangering their lives, not only in the desert, but you see in the Texas sector, people drowning by the 5 or 8 people at a time. And you've seen the videos of people crossing with a baby on them. And they do this because they have this hope of across that river that will give them that illusion that things will be better. But the reality is that the journey there can be life costing many, many times. And it's frankly something that we need to change that message and that tone to say, there's a way and we need to fix that way. And that's how people should be entering.
All right, let's change gears a little bit. So we have, one of the big news items of the summer was the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. So that sent the decision-making power back down to the state legislatures. But there's also talk of having a federal law related to abortion. Do you think there should be a federal law? And also, what do you think laws should be related to abortion?
Well, first, let me tell you that I will never do anything to jeopardize the health of a woman. I have, as you've noted, and we've talked about this, I have 6 kids. I've stated in my official opinion on my website and my record that I'm pro-life. And I have 6 kids, 3 of them are girls. And I think about them. I think about my daughters. I think about everyone's daughters. And I want them to be able to have the ability to protect their own health. And I'm always going to be very, very strict on that. As I think of my own family as well. And that's why I'm also on record as they have to make these choices about their health to be able to offer the right exceptions for the terrible act of rape or incest or definitely the life of the mother. These are all exceptions that I've been on record on supporting so that they can have the ability to protect their health. I say that as a husband, I say that as a son of a mother that I highly respect and a dad of 3 girls as well. Now, as you mentioned, this has been given to the states. This is a decision that was made by the Supreme Court not too long ago. And now the states have to deal with this issue. They have to set the parameters according to the values of that state. Quite frankly, when you look at what California and what Oregon have done in the past already, allowing abortions all the way up to the point of birth, partial birth abortions, that's something that I'm not in support of. And the states are going to have to decide. And I think that's something also that the majority of people are not in support of partial birth abortions. We want the right to choose in the sense of for the exceptions and women being able to make their decision. But when you look at the extreme positions that many on the far left have been taking in states like California and Oregon, that's something that Arizona's going to have to make a decision on.
So I've asked this like hypothetical to all the candidates. We talk about the health of the mother and late-term abortion, and those are very important. But I believe that the majority of abortions are just made by a choice. So it's if there's a 25-year-old woman who it's no health issue, anything like that, she just does not want to be pregnant. Do you think it should be legal for her to have an abortion?
Well, the states are going to have to decide that. In Arizona, they just passed a law banning abortions after 15 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like I said, California and Oregon have a different approach on that, allowing it all the way up to 40 weeks. Mm-hmm. Each state is going to have to make that decision.
And what about you, though?
I'm going to abide by the law in the state that I live in, and I live in Arizona. So I'm going to support the law here in the state of Arizona.
Okay, all right. So we have another big thing going on, water, right? So Colorado River is really low. Lake Mead, Lake Powell, this is an emergency. We got to deal with this. And the federal government does have some role to play in all this. What do you think that Congress should do to help make sure Arizona has the water it needs?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is the big issue. This is the big topic. And I am proud that Arizona has the way that Arizona has dealt with the issue of water. I think this is actually an issue, Kurt, when you go back, you can see a lot of bipartisan support on the policies that we've passed. It's been an issue that politics plays a role in everything, unfortunately, but this is one that I believe, and many that have been fighting this fight in water for a long time can tell you that we're in better shape than other states and done a better job than other states. I mean, how else do you grow the 5th largest city in the nation in the middle of the desert if you are not managing water correctly, when 72% of the water that we use in the state of Arizona is in agriculture? And still we're able to have one of the fastest growing counties in the country, in Maricopa County, continuing to grow. And that development and that growth is happening in our district as well, specifically around Pinal County. So these are issues that we need to continue to tackle in a district like mine, where you have the interest of development and also the interest of our agriculture community that have been in these family farms for a long time, and the land that they've been growing, both as business and otherwise. This is the issue that we need to continue to really focus on, because what we've done here in the state is we actually have a better use of water now and use less water than we did when Eisenhower was president. And that's been due to the right management of water. So again, I think we've done it right up to this point. We need to continue to fight for, the bad management of water on the California side directly impacts Arizona. There's very little we can do on that. So we need to continue to fight, and we need people that understand this issue at the federal level to continue to fight for those rights in water infrastructure, specifically here in our state and in our district. I'm sorry.
Governor Ducey, one of his plans is to have a desalination plant in Mexico. And I would expect that as a member of Congress, you would have to deal with the International Boundary Water Commission and the international negotiations. Do you think, would you support building a desalination plant in Mexico to bring water into Arizona?
This is a very interesting project, and this is in the area of Rocky Point, and it involves, again, the Sonoran government, the Mexican federal government, and the private company as well. And of course, the state of Arizona being a consumer and a customer per se of a desal in that plant. This is something that again, showing Arizona being resourceful and being innovative on tackling the needs that we have here for the growth for the next 100 years and beyond. So that's something that I'm very interested in supporting and making sure that it's obviously done within all the right perimeters and everything in place. But that's something that is very interesting, and we have a great opportunity here in the state. And again, enhancing once again the relationship with Mexico, which is through trade and manufacturing and produce, and now water.
Okay. All right. So we also have another unfortunate aspect of life today is mass shootings. Mm-hmm. And I understand on your website, you are what's the correct? You support the Second Amendment. So I want to know, what would you do to? I think we can all agree that we do not want mass shootings. So what would you do to stop mass shootings, and how would you balance that with the Second Amendment?
Yeah, we absolutely do not want mass shootings anywhere. As a parent, as a dad of 6, this is one of the things that keeps you up at night, the security and safety of your kids, especially when they go to school, which is where we've seen very tragic recent and not so recent cases of this. We have to look at the root issue of the problem and ways that we can actually influence change here. One of them is looking at the root cause of mental health. This is where more resources are needed to be able to add the support for anyone young in school or not that is going through mental health issues that have been unfortunately stigmatized, and There's a stigma around them of not asking for help and not being able to find help. This is something where more resources would truly make a difference. We also need resource officers in our schools that more funding can go to that. We have to look at what ways can the government actually help, and it goes back in the area of resources. And I do think that these things are things that we can tackle the issue without infringing upon the rights of law-abiding citizens that rightfully own firearms, and actually tackle this issue as well this way. But I got to tell you, when you look at where the federal government right now is putting their money and their resources, over $80 billion to hire 87,000 more IRS agents, why don't we put some of that into this issue and invest in tackling the mental health crisis that we have in our country, along with more resources for schools to be able to have the protections necessary.
We had two reader questions that popped up there. Quickly, the school resource officer, should they be armed?
That's the best way to be more effective. Yes.
Okay. And then do you support red flag laws?
Well, red flag laws are interesting because they are they're well intentioned, and I know where they're trying to get to. And in theory, in some of these cases, it could have made a difference. I have an issue with the lack of due process in the process of these laws. I think there are ways that we can get to, again, offer help to those that are going through a mental health crisis, and also at the same time not infringe upon the rights of our Second Amendment to our law-abiding citizens. So we need to find a solution here.
Okay. The gun safety, it has touched a nerve here with the readers. We have another question of the ban on assault weapons. Would you support that or no?
Well, we need to see the ban is coming in different ways, obviously, and the mags or the assault weapons. Again, my stance is that I will not infringe upon the rights of law-abiding citizens.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna dig into some more questions from the readers here.
Sure.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, here's a border one. Why have Republicans not put together a comprehensive immigration policy, which they could have done under Trump's first 2 years?
Well, to be honest with you, this could have been done under Bush. It could have been done under Clinton before then. It could have been done under Obama. Obama ran on a campaign, and even Jorge Ramos, who's a very famous Univision news anchor, supported Obama based on his promise to tackle immigration on his first term. And that didn't happen. The reality is that both sides, Kurt, have played a political football game with the issue of immigration, and it's unfair and it's wrong. And as someone that has gone through the process, I can tell you that it's needed this kind of fixing for a long time, because the process is outdated. It's not that it's ill-intentioned, it's just outdated. It's based on family reunification. That's where the majority of the laws that are in the books are based on. So if you come here and you're uniting family either by marriage or by older parents that you're bringing in to take care of them, the process is a little quicker. It's smoother, and there are more laws that allow for some of that to go through. When the process is due to jobs or economics, that is really the real pull now of why people are coming, then the process gets a lot slower. It needs to be updated for sure. It's not an easy lift and not an easy task. And I think that's why people come in with great expectations and ways to do this, and they realize the big, beast of a project this would be, and other things become a priority. I don't disagree with the reader that made that comment, in the sense that I think the perception that neither side has done what they can do with this, I don't disagree with that, and we need to.
Okay. We have a question. This gets into one of these topics I haven't asked you about yet, but dealing with voting laws. And so I think there is the basic question is Joe Biden the duly elected president of the United States?
Joe Biden is sitting in the White House right now, and we're seeing the consequences of that. We feel it every single day. Inflation is at its worst that it's been for a long time. We need to absolutely talk about that as well in our economy, and why things are the way they are, and the overspending and the border. We're seeing the impact of that. So no one's denying that Joe Biden is in the White House, and we're going to have him there for 2 more years. Now, when you talk about voting laws, though, there are things that we can do better. I support having, being a requirement to have an ID to be able to vote. I don't think that's outrageous. That's something that you need to have for pretty much every other aspect of life. And that's something that I support. I think also increasing the threshold for recounts in Arizona, that's something that we should look at as well. It's way too low right now. This district actually has gone through very close elections in the past and in different cycles. And I think with the higher threshold on the recount, some of these things could be dealt with and going into an immediate recount process versus a lot of the speculation that happened in 2020.
I don't want to just get into semantics, but you phrase it as in Joe Biden is in the White House. So that could be construed as that's the fait accompli of fraud. Do you think that Biden was duly elected president?
Joe Biden is sitting in the White House today, Kurt. No one's denying that. And I'm not going to get into, what exactly happened in 2020. There are people still having a conversation and many fights and division around that. I think elections are about the future, not the past. I'm focused in 2022 and winning this election. I believe that this election, there's a lot more eyes on the ball in terms of poll watchers and poll workers. I've seen a lot of interest from our community, people that maybe haven't been engaged in the past, and now they want to go and volunteer and be part of this process. A lot more interest and value also on the integrity of our voting system, of people maybe that they've taken it for granted for a long time. And now I think our community is awake, interested in this topic, and we're going to see a good, solid election in 2020. My job is to do my part as a candidate, earn the votes, and the community to show up and vote.
Okay. All right. So one of the questions that we get that I really appreciate is which committees do you want to serve on if you were elected?
No, great question. I want to look at what I've done in this decision is look at the real needs of our community and where I can be more empowered to make the right decisions. And the first one that I'll mention is armed services. We have 2 strong military bases in our district, obviously Fort Huachuca in Sierra Vista, and also DM Air Force Base here in Tucson. So I want to make sure that I continue to protect and support the missions flown and operated out of both of these military bases. So it's important for me to be in a committee like that will add these resources. Also, Homeland Security is another committee that is attractive to me for all the issues that we've been talking about. I think I can have an immediate impact in that. And again, my perspective and background will put me in a different and very unique position on how to tackle this issue. Now, if appropriations is an option or something like that, then obviously no one's going to, turn that one down. But of course, as a freshman, we're going to be a team player. We're going to go in there and just focus on making the right choices for our district.
All right. And we have this kind of general question. What would you do to increase job opportunities for your constituents?
Yeah, this goes back to the days that I had at the Chamber of Commerce. And I think the mission hasn't changed. I'm on the side of small businesses. I'm on the side of business owners. They're the number 1 job creators in the state of Arizona, and we need to continue to support them. We have to have the right perspective here that the government does not create jobs. The government creates an environment for businesses to go out and create these jobs. And that's where the relationship is really the strongest, when the government is keeping taxes low, when we're keeping regulations that are outdated and unnecessary out of their lives so they can go on and operate in a free method and way in which they can go on and create more jobs and add more into the economy. So I think this is having a proper fiscal and economic and responsible environment for businesses to come here is key. And Arizona has done a really good job in that in the last few years. And that's what we've been able to see the growth that we have been seeing.
Sorry, my dog started barking, so I muted myself and I had to.
I've been there. No worries.
Okay,
That
great.
was an agreement bark, by the way. I think that was an agreement bark by the, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're getting a bunch of people who are asking for a direct answer of, was the 2020 election stolen by Biden?
I've given you my answer.
And your answer is that he is in the White House.
My answer is he's in the White House. My answer is that I'm looking for 2022 and winning this election, earning the votes, and worrying about my campaign in 2022 and looking forward.
All right. And then I think you've already answered this one. How long have you lived in the district that you're running in?
I lived here, well, practically my whole life. I moved out just for a little bit when we first got married, but I've been here since we moved into Arizona.
Okay. And let's see here. All right. So I like this question. All right. So what are the most important challenges facing our community, and how do you propose to address them when you are elected? And I've kind of asked you about big stuff, but that's a good one. Like, just how do you see it?
Yeah, the number one challenge is inflation right now, the cost of living. This is what's hurting everyone. Rich, poor, wherever you have it, wherever you landed, young families raising their kids like mine or even younger, or people on retirement income. This is hurting everyone. Like I told you, over $800 more on average, people are paying a month for whatever necessities they had just less than a year ago. This is what I'm hearing when I go through the district. I talk to people either at their homes, in phone calls, or at events. This is the topic that it comes up the most by far, because this is hitting everyone. And as much as we like to see gas prices move somewhat on a lower scale, they're still much higher than they were just a little while ago. So we're not where we need to be. Some are projecting that things are going to get worse before they get better. And I can tell you that if the government keeps spending the way they are spending and focusing on the wrong things, this is going to continue to get worse this way. So that's a number one issue plaguing our community right now. When people have to choose between the $3 gallon of milk or a gallon of gas, that's a problem. And a lot of families are suffering through that. So that is the number one issue that we're seeing. And we've talked about the other ones. I think security and safety is something that we want to be able to raise our families in the community where we feel that's what's happening, that the rule of law stands and there's respect for it. And what we see here in Pima County, I can tell you that when I travel to Cochise County, and I'm there quite often, and I hear the stories that they're seeing being even closer to the border, it's nothing like what we're seeing here. It's nothing like what we're seeing here. And we don't have the time to go into the specifics there, but I can tell you that I've done night operations with the Sheriff Daniels over in Cochise County, and I've seen it with my own eyes, what they're facing, the kind of chases that are happening, and the danger that the pouring of these illegal drugs is taking on that community. So that is the other issue. It's really fighting for the cost of living of people, and also for the security of our state and our district.
Yeah, and with inflation, like what do you do? What would you do to curb inflation?
Well, we gotta look at things that are causing it. For quite a while, it was the pumping of money into the economy. Clearly, just basic economics. When you have way more money than goods, that's going to cause inflation. And that was what was initially done as a relief for people that were in trouble due to COVID. Then that just didn't stop, and the role of the government kept growing and growing and growing. Got to the point where we were frankly paying people to not work, employers not being able to bring people back into the workforce and work full-time shifts and so on. And this is directly impacting the service industry more than any other. So and then that impacts supply chain. When you interrupt the supply chain, pouring into our state, that obviously raises costs as well. It prolongs projects, it makes them more expensive, and it's a ripple effect. You can't just pinpoint at one specific thing. It's the whole notion of the government trying to play a role of an economist here within our economy, and that's what that causes. Not being able to have domestic resources of energy. This is another area. I mean, the list goes on, but it's the government really trying to play that role of helping when they're actually making things worse, especially with the approach and the philosophy that this administration has.
Okay, and so we've been doing this for 45 minutes now. Right, this is kind of like our length. So I'm gonna just real quick. I think that we've touched on most of these questions from the readers. Let's see here. Yeah. All right. So let's do the. All right. So I've asked you all my questions and everything. Is there anything that you want to add? An important issue I haven't touched on? Just you got a couple minutes here. What would you like to say?
Well, I will not say just thank you again to everyone for listening in, for the questions. We're always available. The website is juanciscomani.com. Please reach out to us. There's a lot of work to be done. This is a district that I take a lot of pride in, because it's not a district that your party determines who's going to win it. If you look at the last 4 or 5 members of Congress, it has shifted between Republican and Democrat. Almost seems like taking turns or something. But this is something that our community is a very independent thinking community, and I appreciate that because that's what I am. I'm an independent fighter that is fighting, that is going to continue to fight and work with other people the same way I've been doing now. Having local, present, and strong representation from our area is important. I grew up here. I understand the public school system because I'm a product of it, the community college system, working through college. I don't come from privilege. I'm sitting in my office today, Kurt, right now taking this phone call, just 2 blocks away from here. I used to wash cars with my dad when I was in school to make ends meet. Where else in the world can you wash cars in the same neighborhood that you're going to be sitting in your office to run for United States Congress just a few decades later? This is what America's all about. It's about the opportunities that we have. It's about taking advantage of those opportunities. And that's why I'm so proud of this district, because that's what we've done. We've dealt with a lot of up and downs, and we're still fighting. We're still here. And I think it's time to have real local and present representation that we haven't had, at least for the last 4 years, of someone being from our community, for our community. And that's what I bring to the table. A perspective of someone raising 6 kids in this district, my oldest being 13, my youngest being 3. We're going to be in the school system for a long, long time still. I just got off the diaper stage and I'm very happy about that. I was in there for 13 years. Now we're in the schooling stage for the next 12 years. And I'm from this community and I'm not going anywhere. And when you're a parent in this area, any vote that you take, any stands that you take, it tastes different because you're doing it from the angle of having the vested interest of your family in it. So I humbly ask for your readers and your listeners' support and vote in November. I'm going to be working for you all, present and available all through the campaign and beyond as well.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I really, really appreciate that. And also thank you to all our readers who showed up to be a part of this. And I got to do my little coming up next. So if you just give me 1 second. So later on today at noon, we have Brianna Chilius, a candidate for the TUSD Governing Board. And at 4 p.m., we have TUSD Board candidates Luis A. Gonzalez, William R. Soland, and Rebecca Sapien. So hope to see you all there in an hour or so. And again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.